The Dice Tower, episode 623.
If I could turn back time. The Dice Tower is made possible by listeners like you. Thank you for your support. This episode is sponsored by Renegade Game Studios. Welcome to The Dice Tower, a podcast about board games and card games, and especially the people who play them.
In today's show, we look at cute kitsch, criminal political, and a digital deck builder. We also answer a few listener questions in Q&A. I'm Suzanne Sheldon.
And I'm Mandi Hutchinson.
And woman, bring it. Bring it.
I feel like I need to finish that next line in the title. If I could find a way. Okay, now I feel much better. I've completed the title.
Oh, yeah, you felt pent up. You just had to. You couldn't. I like it. I like it a lot. You're in that Cher kind of mood, I guess.
I am. I was listening to the Cher album, like, it's been a while. Takes me back. So I'm like, why not?
And welcome to the podcast, everybody. Of course, we are a board and card game podcast, but as we're looking at, well, what the heck are we going to name this show? We realized we got a couple games lined up that felt time travel-y, I guess, to us in one way or another. And
that's
Mandi,
yeah, exactly.
I think your brain just cannot help but going to songs.
It does. Even when I'm playing games, literally, I'll be like, someone will say something, and all of a sudden, I'll break into song, and then somebody else has a different song that kind of matches the line. Anyway, it's like I'm wondering, is it American Idol / board game night? Like, I'm not sure. It's a thing. It's really fun.
I wanted to give a quick thank you to everybody who attended the panel at PAX West over the last week or whenever you're listening to this about tabletop meets digital. It was a fabulous panel. I had a great time, and it was a really great conversation. You can actually see it on PAX's Twitch channel. They have it saved off. It was a great conversation with people from Direwolf Games and people from Roll20 and from Hyper RPG. So if that strikes your fancy, I would give it a shot. And I also just want to say hi to Phil and Amira, who grabbed me afterwards, and we got to play a game, and they were completely delightful. We played 9 Tiles Panic together, and Amira, at 10-year-old, that kid's got it going on. She knows games, and I had a blast, so I wanted to say hi to them.
Sounds like you had a good time, too. I mean, I saw some posts and stuff about it, and looked like a big room. So how did it go overall, though? Quite good?
It was good. Yeah, they have a very polished setup, which is pretty darn impressive. We have our Dice Tower live shows that have also been pretty impressive. But, man, that PAX, they've got camera operators on booms that like elevators that lift, and they're sliding around, and it was fairly intimidating but also very, very cool. But I'll tell you, and the tabletop area was delightful. The library is quite impressive, and you can go there and check out games. They had the tabletop area a little differently this year, and they just had a ton of conference rooms. So all of these conference rooms on 3 different floors in the Hyatt Regency were open for open play. They had tables set up, which was really, really cool. You could definitely find a table to play. Personally, I felt it felt a little overly segmented to me. Mm-hmm. You couldn't look up and get a sense of how many people were there or who was playing. And if you were looking for a game, it would be fairly challenging to find that. It wasn't necessarily amenable to that. But certainly from a library point of view, from a people who were there to play tabletop games point of view, it was great. There's a group called Playtest Northwest that is a design community up here. They're just fabulous. And they had a bigger room where they had a lot of tables, and designers were showcasing some of their in-development games. And if you haven't gone to a playtest group like that, or an Unpub event, or a Protospiel event, I highly recommend them. And in general, if I'm at a convention, a lot of times I've been asked, and Mandi, I know you get this too, hey, will you try my prototype? And I'll usually decline at those kinds of events just because I'm more focused on meeting people and playing published games or having meetings and things like that. But it's something like a PAX, or where I'm setting aside the time to do this, I'm telling you, these Playtest Northwest or the Protospiel, the Unpub events, they're wonderful. And you will often get to see some pretty amazing games that flash forward a year or two, you'll be seeing on the shelf. And it's always kind of fun to feel hipster and be be able to say, I saw it first. But that was my PAX experience, and it was great. And thank you to everybody who came out to the panel. That meant a lot to me. I appreciate it.
I'm glad it went well, and I'm sorry that, I wasn't able to be there to check it all out. But unfortunately, I don't have any exciting news to talk about yet. Well, that's not true, actually. That's a lie. I'm going to Proto-TO at the end of the month. I was going to talk about it a little bit more toward the next podcast, so I'll leave it. I'll kind of drop it out there for now, but I'll give more details next time. So it just kind of to jump in off of what you were talking about with prototypes.
Yeah. Well, I know, Mandy, that you and I are both playing through Clank Legacy, Acquisitions Incorporated. Now, Tom talked about this a few episodes ago, and he said it could be his favorite Legacy game of all time, but he was saying that after Game 4. Now, right. Mandy, I finished Game 7, so that's where I'm at. Where are you at in your campaign?
We are, I'm trying to think here, 8, 9, 10. I think we are going into Game 7, if I'm not mistaken.
Ooh. Well,
yes.
Huge things. No, I'm kidding. I don't
I have no idea.
So first impressions or mid impressions, I mean, your impressions are deeper now, grounded than Tom's were a few episodes ago. What are your first impressions of it so far?
I can't say, well, I don't know how to phrase this, but
it's so hard, right? Because of spoilers for the legacy element.
Right, and I have to be careful because, I really don't want to do that because I know how frustrating that is. I don't play a lot of legacy games to begin with, so for me, it's like I can't say it's my favorite of all time. Like, I've never played Pandemic Legacy or any of those games, but I do like for a legacy game, you're getting a lot of stuff, and I'm going to say, quote unquote, a short amount of time. Now, the games will progressively get a little bit longer because you are adding more things to the board and that sort of thing, but I still find like I'm not bored. Do you know what I mean? Like, oh, I wish didn't happen, or why are they doing this? I really like how it's laid out. It's fairly straightforward to follow. If you know the base game, or even if you don't, it's easy to catch on. A lot of those elements are the same, but then they've added a few kind of twists, but not in a bad way, if that makes sense. I'm trying to explain this without giving away too much here. Right. I've had people in my group who were kind of lukewarm on the original Clank. They preferred Clank and Spades because it was a bit more of a game in their opinion, and since we've been playing this one, they're like, I love it. They're like, I'm actually going to go and pick this up again and play it with my nephew and some other people. So it's changed their mind actually on Clank in general. So I'm like, wow, because, and maybe we can talk about this a little bit after, but the price point on this one is higher than some.
And Tom and Eric talked a little bit about that too.
Right. Scare people away. But like, I mean, and of course she's concerned about price, and she's like, no, I'd pay the money for it. So that says a lot to me. So overall, we're enjoying it. We do actually have someone that has to step away from the game. I'm curious to see how that'll play out, but I don't actually think it'll affect the game too much, if at all.
That's my sense too. I was thinking about that as we were playing, and thankfully the group I'm playing with were super into it. It was only exhaustion that made us stop playing it the other night. But I could see, I don't think this gives anything away. Basically, the way the game is structured when you start a new game, I think somebody could step into that reasonably with a short explanation around a few key elements and jump in, especially if they know Clank. So I think it'll be interesting to hear your report on that for sure, Mandy, on the drop-in element there. I'd love to hear about it.
Our plan is to have it finished, and you're probably in the same camp. By the time we get to next podcast, I should be done.
That's my hope too. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll
do an end of campaign report and make it as spoiler free as we can, and have it be that'll be one of the most awkward things ever. Awesome.
But what about you? Are you enjoying it?
Oh my gosh, we are having such a blast with it. And all the things that Tom said, all the things that you've said are very, very true. The only thing I would add that I don't think I've heard mentioned is we're laughing a ton because it's based on the Acquisitions Incorporated D&D thing, because it's got that Penny Arcade theme. It lightens it up a little bit, and there are just a lot of the flavor text. I'm not really a big theme person or a big flavor text person, but I am telling you, in Clank Legacy, we are eating it up. And some of the flavor text on the cards is just hilarious. And I think that that's really helping propel us through is the story.
Yes.
And that's awesome too.
There's been a couple of lines on some cards that have just had us just rolling. So yeah, the flavor text is great.
And you're also playing The King's Dilemma, which I have not, but that's a campaign game, right?
Yeah, so The King's Dilemma, which is published by Horrible Games. This one is, so it's longer than Clank. I'm going to start with that. So we're on game 7, and this is maybe halfway through, give or take. I do find the games generally run a little bit shorter. In the King's Dilemma, we've only had a couple where it's run long, but it almost seems like that's when like a changeover is kind of happening. We've either hit cards that we hadn't seen before, or something new's coming out, and those games tend to take a little bit longer, but we've generally been able to play 3 games in a night. And for anybody who doesn't know about this game, we're playing kind of different kind of kingdoms, or different, think of, I don't know if you watch Game of Thrones, but the different, basically, different types of kingdoms in this one place. And I don't want to give too much away, but each kingdom kind of has their own special abilities that they're trying to push forward through, like things that are, I guess, objectives, so to speak, that you're trying to make, and they are tailored to a specific, your kingdom and how you can achieve them. There's some storytelling in the game, and the storytelling gives you choices, which kind of almost comes across like a choose your own adventure. And depending how you choose can affect certain things, like it may affect food, or it may affect the army, or your military, or it may affect all sorts of things. If you've played Reigns, I know we talked about it, the app Reigns on this podcast before. It's very similar kind of effect. Like by doing one thing, you could affect the church, or by doing something else, you could affect your military. So that is very similar. And in doing so, are you meeting your objectives? And you have to vote aye or nay on certain things. And it's really hard when other people are voting the opposite of what you want, because you're like, no, I'll give you money to change your vote to this. You're trying to entice the person who can break the ties. Here, I'll throw you a couple coins if you make our vote happen, or, you break the tie in my favor, things like that. So I'm not a huge fan of negotiation, and I like the way it's done here. So far, the consensus is that the storytelling is wonderful. We're having a really good time with the story, and I think that is the biggest part of the game. The other things like the negotiation and that sort of thing, it's kind of a side piece. All that to say, because of the strong storytelling, that's what keeps you playing. If that wasn't there, I don't know how much game there is going to be. The fact that the storytelling is strong makes us stay and makes us want to play more. That's what I have so far. We're about halfway through, so I'm curious to see if it kind of amps up or progresses in a different direction. We'll see, and I'll give you an update when we get closer to the end.
Awesome. Well, I know you've got one more kind of campaignish game that you are digging into. I don't know how you're doing it, Mandy, but maybe you can tell us a little bit about that one.
Sounds like a plan.
So, what have you been playing lately?
All right, let's jump in. Oh, geez, I just realized I'm going to talk about a space game. I do not. Okay, I deserve it.
For all those space games that you dislike, yeah, got it, Mandy. Mm-hmm.
All right, well, here we go. So the first game I'm going to talk about today is Space Base. Specifically with the Emergence of Shy Pluto expansion. So this is designed by John D. Clare, artist is Chris Walton, and publisher is Alderac Entertainment Group. So Space Base plays, and with the expansion, 2 to 5 players in about 30 to 75 minutes. Mechanisms in the game are card drafting and dice rolling. The Space Base game on its own costs 35 Canadian and about 29 US. The expansion is 23 Canadian and about $22 US. For anybody who's new to the podcast and doesn't know, the pricing that I'm taking are from online vendors, specifically Board Game Bliss, which is a Canadian-based site, and Cool Stuff Inc., which is an American-based website. So let's jump right in. I'm going to give you a quick overview of Space Base, because in order to understand the expansion, I have to talk about the game. Now, this is going to be a tricky one, because the expansion... How would you explain this, Suzanne? It's not a legacy. It's more of a, I don't know what kind of, it's one of those games
Unlockable or?
Yeah, it's one of those games where it kind of develops a little bit of a story as you go. And when I say story, I use that loosely, just new things come out. I'll stop there because I know me. If I keep talking, I'll give stuff away. So let me jump into Space Base.
It's true, she will.
Yes, I know. I can't help it. The goal of Space Base, well, it's very easy. We're trying to race to 40 victory points. And in Space Base, you have this long board in front of you, and you're like, what? This is so cool. And these, like, small, it's weird. They're like tarot size, but mini. I don't know how else to explain them. What kind of size?
Yeah, they're super skinny cards.
Right, yeah. So, tarot size, but mini. I'm just going to go with that. So, I don't know if I guess this is like your ship or something. I'm really bad with, as you can see, with space explanations. But you have a ton of cards on your board, and I think it goes up to 12. So it's the same numbers that you would find on dice. And what's going to happen is you have a setup at the beginning where everyone gets a certain amount of money. You have an income track. So basically, when you've spent money, this token's going to come back to that spot. Usually starts at 0 for most. And then you have a points track. The cards on your board, these are important because when certain numbers are rolled, you're going to get whatever it states on either the middle of the card, so the cards on your board, and those happen on your turn, or if you have cards that have been kind of flipped and slid underneath at the top of your board, you'll get those on somebody else's roll. In the game, player rolls some dice, and there are 2 dice that you're rolling, and you either can take the combination of the numbers or each number separately. So for example, if I rolled a 3 and a 2, which means that, so me as the active player, and let's say Suzanne was the other player, as the active player, I can take the 5. So I look on my board and the card that's in the 5 slot, I would get as the active player, the kind of whatever's in the blue area of the card that's on my board. Now I could have chosen to take in the 2 and the 3. So whatever was in the 2 slot and the 3 slot. Suzanne, as a player that's not active, if she had any cards that had been removed, so replaced, and then that card on the board was then taken and flipped and slipped under the board in the numbered slot, she could take that, and they're usually red at the top of the board. For example, if she said, oh, I have something in my 5 slot, and it's, flipped up at the top in red, she could take that bonus. If not, she would get nothing. And, we do that back and forth throughout the game. After you've done the roll, you have an opportunity, if you've collected money or have enough money, to buy a card from what's laid out on the table. And there are 3 levels of cards. Obviously, pricing will make a difference. There are also points cards you can buy, but once you buy those and place them in a slot, that slot's kind of locked for you as an active player, but you can still get bonuses as an inactive player. So on somebody else's turn with those red bonuses. They also have cards with green kind of bonuses on them, and those are bonuses you can take on any player's turn. You do that back and forth basically until a player reaches 40 victory points. You finish the current round, determine a winner. I think I covered it all. It's a pretty easy kind of game.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward.
I think that's usually how it goes. Okay, so now let's slip into the Emergence of Shy Pluto, which is the expansion. So they call it the first installment of the Space Base Saga expansions. This is the first one, I think, for me that I've seen. There may be others. They call it a collection of story-based scenarios. I'll be honest, I don't know how much story is there, but sure, we're gonna go with that because I think that's where they've wanted to go with it. Let us look at some of the things that have been added. Okay, so I just wanted to say, slight spoiler going forward here. It's not a huge thing, but some people may not want to hear anything about the Space Base expansion. So minor spoiler, minor spoiler, minor spoiler. Take this time to go over, potentially fast forward a little bit. If you have to get up and walk over, I'll give you a bit of time to do that. And then we're going to jump right into talking about the expansion. In Emergence of Shy Pluto, there are dice added. I know you're like, wow, this is exciting. Well, you only have 2 to begin with, but as you progress, more interesting dice will come out. And this can generally change, not necessarily the gameplay, but maybe things that you might get. So I'm going to leave it there with that. And then you also get new tokens, and these will also open some new doors for you, potentially allowing you to get more things in the game. I know I didn't really give you much there with the expansion, but I didn't want to give too much away. So basically all you need to know, fun new dice, new tokens, and some other fun new things are going to come out. Something to note is that once the story has been completed, you can replay it with what's been added. And that I thought was really good. That to me kind of stepped it up a little bit and gave it some other things to make it more interesting. The Emergence of Shy Pluto. There you go. So I think that's, I don't know how else to explain it without giving it away, but I think that gives you an idea. I liked it. I already liked Space Base because it kind of reminded me of like Machikoro, but better. I don't know. I hear that a lot from a lot of people, but it played really well. I've played it with 2, plays really quickly. I've actually played it at lunchtime with 2. I wouldn't recommend playing the expansion at lunchtime because it does take some time, but we were able to play through it rather quickly. I definitely liked in the expansion certain elements that came out I liked better than others. So others, there were a few where I was like, okay, let's just, zip, get through this quickly. And then something else came out. Ooh, okay, I like this. It's almost like those parts, I'm like, yeah, I want to keep those bits. And the other things, I'm like, well, we can just, they're done. We don't need to use those anymore. But you do have that option once it's over what you want to keep. So I do like that. So you can change that out a little bit. The expansion doesn't change it a ton. So it doesn't make it super difficult. It just adds kind of different elements. So if you were worried about, oh, I really like this game to play with someone who doesn't like a lot of crazy elements in the game, and you were worried about this making it too difficult, it's not going to do that at all. I still think the level of difficulty is fairly similar to the same. That just adds fun new bits to it. Even the time of play, I didn't find it wasn't overly lengthy, because I find sometimes expansions can do that with a game. I didn't find that happened here. I do still feel that it was pretty consistent with its original timing. So I don't have a ton of things to say without giving away too much, obviously. But overall, I still like the game. To say I did like some elements that came out better than others. And I do think there are a couple that I'm definitely going to continue to play with. That was Space Base. The Emergence of Shy Pluto was the expansion. I liked it.
Very cool. Mandy, you may know I'm a big fan of trick-taking games.
Oh, as am I.
I love when new trick-taking games come out, and I always approach it with the optimism of, oh, they're going to bring something new. So, for example, Diamonds. When Diamonds came out from Mike Fitzgerald from Stronghold Games, I was so excited for it, and I just love it. They just came out with a second edition that improves one of the things I didn't love about the first edition, which is the graphic design on the cards, which I felt they were hard to read. The new edition fixes all that, and I'm really glad that they did that with the second edition. But I'm just a huge fan because my gaming history goes back to playing trick-taking games with my family as a child. My grandparents played bridge, my family played euchre, things like that. So trick-taking games, you've got my attention. Well, Renegade Games is coming out with Time Chase, a trick-taking game with a time travel element. What? What?
Yes.
When somebody described this to me, I honestly couldn't wrap my head around it. And to be honest with you, I couldn't wrap my head around it until I was about 2 rounds into the game. And then it clicked. Time Chase is designed by Jonathan Woodard, and the art is by Alan Ponicle and publisher Renegade, and it's going to retail for $20. It's a card game with a few tokens and some plastic crystals. Plays 3 to 6. So that time travel element is really that you're going to play a trick-taking game, but you can kind of revisit tricks that have already been completed. What happens is you're going to play a fairly standard trick-taking game where a player leads a card. In this game, it's all sci-fi, kind of abstract art. I'm quite fond of the art. I think the art is very cool. There's 5 suits in this game, and it kind of scales up and down depending on player count. And one player is going to play a card, and then all the other players, if they have that suit in their hand, they have to play a card that matches the suit. That's called following. Then whoever plays the highest card in the lead suit wins the trick. Ta-da! It's a very standard trick-taking thing. Like, that is so standard. And the fact is trick-taking is one of the niches of games that just has its own language, that once you know one, that shorthand is used in all other. It just transfers from one trick-taking game to another, which makes it really difficult to learn new ones if you don't have that context. But anyway, in Time Chase, what happens is you're going to play a trick and you leave it there. So there's 10 tricks. You have 10 little time markers that are lined up in a row. And then you're going to play your first trick and it goes under the number 1 marker. You play your second trick, it goes under this number 2 marker down the line. So you're actually laying completed tricks out in a row. And that's your timeline of sorts. And you each have a little meeple. And your meeple sits next to one of those tokens, and that's where you're playing in that round. Now, when you play a card that is lower than the lead suit, you can earn a crystal, a fuel crystal. Ooh. And then at each round, you have the option of spending crystals to go back in time. Oh, man, we could have sung that one.
Oh, I know. I know. I just realized I'm like, that was a missed opportunity.
I'm not an on-call performer. Okay. And if you go back in time, you'll secretly bid to show how many steps back you're going, and then you move your meeple, and then wherever your meeple lands, that is the trick you're going to be playing. So you look at the cards that are there, and you can, let's say, the Trump suit is changed, or the invariant suit has played. And now you've got a handful of those. Oh, well, now you can win all these other tricks, and you can go back in time and play and take away control of that trick. Because what's going to happen is when you win a trick, you mark it with a little token. And in point of fact, that's one of the ways you win this game, is if you hit control of 3 units in time or tricks, you win the game. You can use these crystals, you go back in time, you can reclaim control or take over control, or you can just play the one that you're at and progress forward and control the lead. You can earn more crystals, you can save them up, you can try to go way back in time to change the invariant suit, that kind of thing. And it's just a trick-taking game. And it was so clever. It was magical. Now, it did take me a round or two to kind of get it, and then it clicked, and I'm like, this is amazing. This is amazing. I never would have thought. This is why game designers impress me. I just don't know how their brains work. It's wild. How do you even come up with this stuff? But it just works. It's fascinating about how your cards take on different values based on where you are and what's being played and the invariant suit, and are you saving up those crystals, and how do you kind of discuss table talk and trick-taking games is a big thing. Well, in this one, it's kind of, there's some table talk around, well, how far back are you going to go? Or, oh, look, this person's got 2 tricks that they are to control. Somebody's got to go back and take control of that one. And there's a little bit of table talk along there that is interesting. And I'll just tell you, I had a ton of fun. It's so different and yet so familiar. And that kind of mashing together works for me in a major way. If you like trick-taking games, and if the time travel thing sounds at all interesting, I highly recommend Time Chase. It's fabulous fun, so clever. Now, what I will say is the rulebook's interesting because the rulebook is trying to teach trick-taking in case you don't know how to play a trick-taking game. I think trick-taking is one of the hardest things to teach in games if you don't know the shorthand.
Right.
And they've put some thematic language in the rule book. So instead of trump suit, you have invariant suit, things like that, which I get thematically. But as somebody who knows the language of trick-taking, I had to go through this translation process in my head as I'm reading the rule book of, okay, wait, this means that, and this means that. And when you do this, I literally had to translate thematic rules to traditional trick-taking language in my head to make it work. That's as much on me. I'm not saying the rule book is bad. I'm saying it's designed for people who don't know what trick-taking is inherently. And I think that that's a real challenge. And whether or not the rule book is 100% successful, I actually can't say. Like, I've played so many trick-taking games. I had a specific challenge with that. I actually don't know how the rule book does for somebody who's never played a trick-taking game and is trying to learn it. But they clearly made an effort to cater it, I think, in that way. That's not even a criticism. It's just an observation of how do you teach trick-taking to people who don't know what it is, I guess.
Right.
Anyway, enough babbling. Time Chase, trick-taking game, time travel, wonderful experience. I love it. I can't wait to play it again.
So on my shelf, it's one of my friends have actually read the rules, ready to teach it. I'm happy to see it's a 3 to 6. I don't know. I always get a little weary about games that are, say, 2 to 6 for trick taking. So I'm like, is it though?
For sure.
So yeah, this one I've heard good things about. So I'm looking forward to giving it.
Yeah, and I've played it at multiple player counts, and it scaled just fine. You remove suits depending on player count, so it scales nicely.
So a game that was a interesting surprise. Brought me back there to back in the school days. Trapper Keeper. And this is designed by Prospero Hall. There is no artist that is credited online, and the publisher is Big G Creative. It's 2 to 5 players, plays in about 25 minutes, and it has a set collection kind of mechanism in it. It's $24 US, and I think it's a Target exclusive. Now, I could be wrong about it being an exclusive. I just know I've only seen it at Target. For us Canadians, that's looking like that's where we're able to get it. So this game also, you'll see it comes in 3 kind of different covers. It's the same game. I have to throw that out there because people think they're different games. They're exactly the same, just the different covers. So anybody who's familiar with Trapper Keepers, what they actually are, the folders and get to put all your stuff in. Oh my gosh, it's so... Anyway, I'm starting ahead and before I explain the game, but the name is very appropriate.
It's hitting me in the nostalgia gene, really hard. That was my era, sister.
Right? The only one they're missing is the Corvette one. I remember the one being like a Corvette or something, but anyway, I digress. We can talk about that as I've explained what the game does. It's just, I had so many feelings about this one. So in Trapper Keeper, I've actually played this quite a bit. Because it plays very nicely at lunchtime. But players are trying to collect the most points by really expanding their set collection in this game. And there are a variety of things that you can do to collect certain sets of cards. It doesn't mean a lot now, but it will when I start explaining it. So as a teacher, this really, really got me in certain ways. I'm like, oh yeah, that totally makes sense. In the game, quickly, to set up, everyone gets a folder, and they look like those little Mead folders. I think it's Mead, M-E-A-D.
The little side pocket binders, yep.
Yeah, exactly. So a little folder, you have little pocket sides in them, and they're little mini ones. They're super cute. And then we have these school paper cards that we have, and they look like kind of like little lockers on the back of them. And these go out in a 3x3 grid, and I think there's like 9 cards in the stack. Then we have to flip the tops of these cards. So this is the area that we're going to be taking cards from. And then we have bell cards, and this is kind of a way to time the game. And basically when you flip that over, it shows a pattern. And that pattern is a way that you can say, oh, I can take these cards. This pattern can't be rotated or flipped, but it may have a saying, instead of saying that you can take a row of cards, you may be able to take a certain pattern that's listed on that card. But we'll get to that in a second. And then someone gets to be the teacher's pet for the game. So they get the, literally, like it's an apple marker. And they're the ones who can be responsible for flipping those bell card stacks. Easy peasy, right? Before I get into it, there are different kinds of cards that you can acquire in the game. So you have quizzes, and the quiz cards are great because they have points on them. That's literally it. You're collecting the quiz, it has points. Homework cards are a little different. Homework, you get, I think you get a certain amount of points if you have the most, and then the second most gets points as well. It's also tied to report cards. If you have a report card, and wait for it, you have a signature card, so your report card has been signed. For every homework you have, it will be worth 1 point. Then you have notes from your classmates. This is my favorite. And this is another kind of like set collection element in itself, where if you have different types of notes, you'll get points based on how many different notes you have from your classmates. Detentions, these are really cute. You score 2 points for each detention you have, unless you're the player who has the most detention. That was you, Suzanne, right? You had a lot of detention.
What?
I'm just kidding. I'm totally kidding.
Dare you? How dare you?
1 detention ever. Okay, maybe 2. Then we have field trip cards. And of course, if you want to go on the field trip, you need signatures. So this is where you have to pair these with a signature, and you'll get a certain amount of points. Those are just the cards. There is another element that scores, but I'll quickly jump into how to play the game. On your turn, what's going to happen is the card is flipped, the one I was telling you about that has the pattern on it. You each are going to take turns picking cards either in a row or a column, or based on the pattern of the bell card. And you can't, like I said before, you cannot rotate that orientation, so you're going to have to take it as is. So once you've taken a row, column, or against, the pattern of cards, you're going to take those cards. All of them have to go in your folder. You have to pick a side. Is it going to go on the side that says blue markings or red markings? So that's on the left and the right. The reason why is because each of the cards on the sides of the cards, it has markings in either red or blue. I think there's hearts, there's the cool S, there's tic-tac-toe, there's a smiley face, there's a cube, there's all different things. These are going to be scored as well. So depending on what side you put it on will depend on what color you're going to count. So if I have some cards and let's say it has some hearts, one has squares, one has smiley faces, and those are all in blue, and then the other side might have a few other different things in red, I have to determine, which side do I want it to count on? So I was like, I'll put it on blue. So I put all the cards in blue, and I do that every turn, pick a side that I want to put the cards on, and at the end of the round, we're going to count all the blue symbols you have of hearts, and then all the red symbols you have of hearts, add them together, and then we go around for everybody else and see who has the most, who has the second most, and that's how we score points. That is another way that you're scoring points. After all the bell cards have been flipped, basically that's saying, the game's over. That's where we're going to now do all the scoring. So that's where we score the doodles. That's the whole red and the blue side of the cards. Add those up, see who scored the most. Who had the most scores the highest points. Second most gets the next set of points. Then we score all the cards that I was telling you about earlier, and whoever has the most points wins. It's actually a very straightforward game once you go through it. I've played it with my colleagues. They really like this game so much. They're like, can you bring it again and teach it to somebody else? And that's good to me because it means they caught on to it. Didn't have too many questions, which I don't mind. But for a lunchtime game, you want something that's fairly straightforward. I think the thematic element was really big on this game. For me, it brought me back. I was like, I used to doodle those things, or I used to have this Trapper Keeper thing. And I first saw it and thought, oh boy, it's going to be one of those games. Oh, it's going to be terrible. I literally thought this. I was like, oh, it's going to be so cheesy. No, I did, because sometimes I see these games and I want it to be really good. And I get my expectations and hopes really high. And then it's never what I think it is. And I have to tell you, I actually really enjoyed it. It's a smart little game. It's super cute. It's very similar to Cat Lady, I find, in some ways.
I get a similar vibe. But the scoring is more complex to me in Trapper
It is.
Keeper.
You know what? And you're right, because there's not just scoring one thing, they're scoring multiple things.
Yep.
And I know for the scoring, that's something I kind of had to facilitate as someone who knew the game and explain it as we went. Do you know what I mean? Like, it wasn't something I could just throw out there and people knew. I had to go through it. And they give you a score pad so you can kind of keep track of everything. And even on your Trapper Keeper, which I liked, your folders, it tells you what each of the cards mean or how you can score for them, and even on the cards themselves. So there are lots of opportunities for people to say, oh, that's how that scores, or oh, yeah, there it is. That's how many points I'm going to get for that. I like that. Even though there's not a player aid, there are lots of areas where it tells you how things score and how things work. Overall, I mean, I really liked it. I didn't have a ton of negative things to say. It went fairly well. The scoring, you're right, can be a little tedious. It is a bit on, the lengthier side. But if you have someone who knows the game that can kind of walk you through that part of it, it kept everybody's interest. It wasn't too long. And I do like the fact it gave you options. So you can pick a row, a column, or the pattern. So you're always getting cards. Sometimes you end up getting cards that are, surprise, because they're face down.
Face down, yep.
And this is something I didn't talk about in the rules, but you only flip cards that are face down when there are three or less cards in the display.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
So we had some turns where people were like, nope, I'm going to take this, because they knew the next person would have to draw blind. And we all know that nobody wants the most attention. So that's another way for people to kind of not be mean, but really kind of say, well, no, surprise for you. Well, that is kind of mean now that I think about it. Okay, but you get where I'm going. It's not terrible. Overall, I really enjoyed Trapper Keeper. I like the nostalgic feel to it. It was a smart game overall. Highly recommend you at least give it a try. So that's Trapper Keeper.
And I'm fully on board. The nostalgia hit me so hard, but it is a solid game. All of the thematic elements were so clearly, deeply thought out.
Oh, yeah.
And are very engaging for anybody that understands that era, but also just today. I mean, it's still notes on report cards and things like that. It's still relevant for anybody today.
Absolutely. And yeah.
But that extra kitsch is just delightful. And then it's just a very solid little drafting game. It's not complex. I think it hits the mark for exactly what it wants to be.
And that's it.
It's spot on.
That's it. And you said that exactly right. It wasn't trying to overreach. No, this is exactly what it was going for. Oh, and my favorite kind of cover design was the Lisa Frank-esque. I say because it wasn't Lisa Frank, but Lisa Frank-esque imagery. And that, if you are familiar with Lisa Frank, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. That had me. It was amazing. Love it, because I had a lot of that stuff.
Well, this is going to be an episode that, for once, I'm not talking about a game that's impossible to get in North America. Go figure.
Okay.
But a year ago, this game would have qualified. Little Town, which was originally Little Town Builders, published by Studio GG. Well, Yellow picked it up and is releasing it as Little Town in North America. And I think that's wonderful. I love seeing Western publishers or however you want to phrase them, bringing games out of the Asian market to a broader audience. So Little Town is designed by Shun Taguchi and Aya Taguchi, and the art is Sabrina Miramol, and it's going to retail for $30, the yellow version.
Okay.
And what Little Town is, it's a little worker placement and resource management game. Got a little bit of interesting engine building, I guess, in a way. And that's a lot of words, but you have a little handful of workers, and you got a handful of tiles that are laid out in a market, kind of, and you've got a board. And on your turn, you have two choices. That's it. Either place a worker on the board and activate tiles to get resources or take actions, or place a worker in this market zone to purchase a tile and place it on the board. Those are your choices. Put a worker on the board or place a tile on the board. Ta-da! Now, when you place a worker on the board, you're going to actually put it on the board. And then you are going to activate all of the spaces around your worker. So the 8 spaces around you. So you activate the spaces to the sides and above and below, but also at the diagonals, which isn't too common. But in this game, that's how that works. Now, most of those are there's some on the board already, pre-printed on the board, places that will give you water or give you stone, that kind of thing. But then as you're adding tiles, building tiles to the board, if you place next to one of those buildings will activate as well.
Okay.
So you're going to place your worker. You're trying to optimize what you're surrounded by to make sure you get the resources that you need, or you just get lots of stuff. And At the end of the round, when all of the workers have been placed, whether to buy a building or to activate buildings, you clear everything off and you just keep on going. You play in 4 relatively quick rounds. Now, when you buy a building, you do have little houses that shows you purchased that building and it's yours. And if you activate a building somebody else owns, you do have to pay them a coin. Pretty standard stuff. Now, at the end of every round, you have to feed your people.
Oh, boy.
Oh, boy. Yep, you got to feed your people. And what that means in this game is you have to discard a fish or a wheat cube for every meeple you have. And the number of meeples you have literally only depends on player count. So if you have 2 players, you're going to have a lot of meeples. You have like 5. If you have 5 or 4 players, you have 3, I think. At that, you just have to have 3 fish or wheat cubes and discard them. And if you don't, you lose 3 points each, which, losing points is typically bad. So there you go. You play through 4 rounds of that, placing your workers, getting your stuff. More expensive buildings will produce more points or produce more powerful actions, that kind of thing. And at the end of the game, whoever has the most points wins. It's a very, very, very simple game. Where I think the game really kicks in is certainly the efficiency of using your meeples and the spatial element of how you place those buildings and then where you place your meeples to capitalize on those buildings. And I do think that's interesting. When I said earlier that there's an engine building element, the engine is really in your worker placement. And what engine can you generate around you? Okay, well, this spot produces a stone, and this tile lets me convert stone into gold. And this tile lets me convert gold into whatever, right? So you can put your worker down and then try to activate all these spaces. You can do it in any order you want to. And that's a little micro engine that you've created in that round. And that's a lot of fun. I think that that's a very interesting part of the game. The boards are double-sided, which doesn't really have a huge impact other than there's just slightly different variants in the pre-printed features on what you can get to get the game going. Perhaps interestingly, I like this game better at 2 than at the higher player count because you only get so many meeples. So at a higher player count, if you only have 3 meeples and you play in 4 rounds, you get a total of 12 actions in the entire game. Maybe just not quite enough to really feel like you got something moving. But at 2, you get 5. And there you were really feeling like it was going. The trade-off is, at a higher player count, there's a lot more player interaction on the board in terms of activating other people's buildings and kind of crossing into quote-unquote other people's areas and things like that. So there's definitely trade-offs there. But personally, I think I enjoy it at a smaller player count. And the only other thing I'll mention is that there's actually a nice big set of tiles, but you only put out like 12 per game. And you can mix and match to your heart's delight. So there is a lot of variability. There's some really powerful buildings in this one, and the variability is great, but it can lead, if you're doing it truly random, it can lead to some really odd scenarios where engines just can't quite click. Or, like you have a lot of buildings that are generating, say, wheat, but then none of the buildings cost wheat kind of thing. It's one of those risks you come from randomization, but it does add a lot of mix and matchy stuff, which players tend to like. Variability in setup, variability in play. And Little Town definitely has that as well. So for $30, it scales 2 to 5. It's a quick game. It's a simple game. It has some rewarding things. I like it. I think it's a nice little worker placement game that definitely does a few things a little differently than a lot of other ones. I think it's a nice game that's definitely worth checking out. And that is Little Town from Yellow.
I've heard a few things about this one. Is it any way similar to Tiny Town, or is it completely different?
Oh, it's completely 100% different.
Okay, because some people have kind of mentioned they just based off title, and I'm like, I don't think they're the same game.
Which I actually think is a concern. The titles are so close. Like, right? I think there's a lot of mixing of the two in title-wise.
Exactly. Yeah.
It is what it is. There's only so many titles in the world.
Well, and this is it.
Looking for a new great game to add to your collection? Don't forget to check out Artsy from Renegade Games hitting stores this week. And hey, Phase 2 of Power Rangers Heroes of the Grid will be on Kickstarter September 17th. So mark your calendars for morphing time.
All right, so now we're going to jump into Tales of Glory. I don't know why I had a song, and then I'm like, no, that's not the right title. I think it's a Lady Gaga song. I'm on the edge of glory. And I'm like, nope, not Tales of Glory, but it has glory in it. It's like, yeah, okay. So the designer of Tales of Glory is Romain Chastain. The artist is Miguel Coimbra, and the publisher is Ankama. So this is retailing for about $42, I think, for both American and US. I know it's available online for us. I think it might be a pre-order, but it says it's out of stock for some other places in the US. So must be popular. So some mechanisms in this game are card drafting, hand management, simultaneous action selection, and tile placement. Yes, there is a lot going on in this game. Oh, so many things I want to say about this game, but I'll try not to give it all away.
Okay.
The goal of this game is basically you're trying to gain the most prestige after 10 rounds, and then that's when we will declare a winner, and there's some scoring that will ensue after that. In this game, everybody starts off by getting their own kind of deck of cards, I guess you could say. And you have a character, and you have a tile that you're given. And on this tile, there are a few different things. You'll notice some symbols as like a chest on it, which will have some things that you're going to start with at the beginning of the round. And I think and you can help me out here if I get these wrong, Suzanne. I think they could possibly be potions or coins. Sometimes you start with a certain amount of combat or magic in your play area, depending on what your starting tile states. Mm-hmm. And then from that, you'll also have your cards you're going to play, and your cards are numbered. And this is based on another board, which has a whole bunch of different tiles on it, that you're going to use these cards to kind of purchase or take these tiles. And depending where on the board they may cost you, where they are located on the boards, they just may cost you a little bit more. And there are different levels of tiles which you'll cycle through the rounds and then get closer to the end of the game. They get a little bit more expensive, but they also yield some very interesting results as they have connections that can happen. This is something we'll get into in a little bit here. And then playing the game, each round I'll just give you a brief overview, goes like this. We all want to gain tiles, right? So this is where we are going to play these cards. Players simultaneously will choose an adventure tile, you're thinking that you want to take from the board. And then what you want to do is you're going to take your cards. So they call them selection cards. Everyone kind of chooses a card. 1, 2, 3, flip your cards. And this is where you're going to be able to take the tiles. Now, if certain people choose the same tiles, well, if you tie when you're choosing the tiles, it's basically now you got to kind of wait till everyone does the thing, gets their tiles, and then in turn order from that, you take what's remaining, which kind of sucks because you're like, I really wanted that one. And well, you may just kind of get with whatever is left there, which is frustrating because I feel like I tied a lot, but tried to make it work. And sometimes some of the tiles that are on that top row cost you extra potions or money to get in addition to whatever their cost is. So that can be a little frustrating. Once you've take the tiles, you're going to place them in your, I don't know what you want to call it, your realm. I feel like I want to call it a realm. But you're going to place it basically in your, legend board. That's the correct terminology. So basically you're attaching it to your hero tile, which you had at the beginning of the game. And there are some rules when you're placing them. You can't orient the tiles in, opposite ways. It has to be exactly how they are, kind of face up. They also have these kind of arrows, some of them, on the side, and there are different colors of, I don't know what you want to call them, but they're little symbols on the tiles, and sometimes they require you to be placed with another tile of that color in order for you to get bonuses. If they have kind of an arrow on the side, you want to connect them to another arrow. Some of them have key parts on them. So if you connect a key part to an empty arrow, but it's not 2 keys, that's okay. You just won't be able to unlock a key to get a chest bonus, or like a little treasure chest bonus on another tile that's attached to that tile. That was a lot. So basically on the tiles, there are some treasure chests. And if you have connected a key, you can use that key to open a treasure chest on any tile that's connected to the tile that you just connected. So these can be potions, it can be money, it can be all kinds of fun things. You also can make connections to other tiles that say, hey, if you're connected to, a blue tile, you might get extra money or something to that effect. There are some tiles that don't have any connection arrows at all. It's just a wall. And you have to be able to connect that tile to another one that has a wall. So you can't connect arrows with walls and things like that. So there are some restrictions basically on how tiles have to be connected. Now, if I'm not mistaken, I think you still need to be able to get back to your hero tile, if I'm not mistaken. But basically, if you connect it properly, that should be able to happen.
Yeah, we never found that to be a big issue. That's not hard to do.
No, I thought that was pretty straightforward with this game. The keys, I was obsessed. You don't need to get them, but I legitimately was like, I want to open all the chests. So yeah, that was a thing. Really important, I found anyway. After you've connected your tile, you can get all the bonuses that you want, or that you're able to from the tiles you've connected, and then you're going to set up for the next round. Tiles are going to get shifted. Sometimes, depending on your player count, tiles are removed from the board. So you're like, oh, I'll just wait till next round, it'll shift down. No, the one that's in that lower slot there is going to vacate the board. It's one of those things, if you want it, don't hesitate to get these tiles. We also played with, I don't remember the name of these tiles, but they were additional tiles that you could play with, and you get to choose at the beginning of the game. These extra tiles that you could pay for. They're a little bit more expensive, but they give you nicer bonuses. And I think there are 2 of them that you can add into your kind of legendary board area. This is not part of the base game, but it is something that you can add to get kind of those extra bonuses. The game ends after 10 rounds, and basically when all 3 piles of adventure tiles are empty, because when you start the game, you have adventure pile 1, 2, and 3. These are the tiles that are going to go out on the board. Then you're going to score majority. So the player who has the most money in the reserve takes the majority money token. So these little kind of awards that they give you, and you collect 4 victory points. If players are tied, then you basically, it's friendly ties. So each will get the bonuses. And then we do the same thing for potions. Character tiles, there are some that have little time symbols on them, and those are endgame bonuses. So this would be now when you collect those as well. Then you basically count up all the points and see who wins the game. I remember now. The tiles that we played with are the quest tiles.
Okay, cool.
And those can be dealt out at the start of the game, and you get to basically pick 2. And then you can decide to, you're not penalized if you don't, but they add a little bit more to your board. Tales of Glory. Oh, I really, really, really liked this game. I didn't know much about it when we got it. I saw the art and I'm like, it's so cute. And the colors were vibrant. I really enjoyed it. I liked the kind of puzzle part of like, oh my goodness, okay, where am I going to put this? Do I unlock a key? Because give me a bonus. But if I put it here, it's better placement for later because another tile might come out that might connect to this better. Like it's not a difficult game, but I like the little decisions that were involved in it. And I'm not great at tile laying games. I don't know what it is. It's a spatial thing. I think I'm doing something really well. I'm like, nope, that was a bad decision. But in this game, I still felt like I had a fighting chance, so to speak, because maybe I didn't get the key here, but I set myself in a way that maybe I was able to get another bonus with something else. Like there was always something else that I could work off of, and I liked that. Granted, yes, it did suck a few times where you're like, I'm tired and I really wanted that tile. Oddly enough, I still managed to find a workaround. And sometimes those starting tiles kind of give you an idea of the direction you want to go. So like if you have a lot of money, maybe you do want those bigger tiles or finding a way to keep generating that money. I had one where I had a lot of magic. So I was able to buy a lot of those tiles that were higher in magic price because I kept building the amount of magic I had. So basically tiles were practically free, right? And I didn't have to spend extra tokens. I liked the fact that you could take a variety of kind of paths to win and it still could work for you and you weren't really stuck. So even though you maybe didn't get that tile, you could find another one and make it work. Maybe it wasn't ideal, but you can make it work and your hero kind of guides you in that direction. The quest tiles we threw in there just as to kind of see what it did. And again, it doesn't penalize you, but it's kind of fun because they are more expensive and they kind of changed maybe the direction that you might want to go in because of the benefits that they might give you. So Tales of Glory for me, I really enjoyed it. Played in I think about 45 minutes to an hour. Easy to explain, easy to play. Great game. Tales of Glory was wonderful. I really enjoyed it.
I am a little frustrated with you, Mandy.
Why?
Because I haven't gotten enough plays in of Tales of Glory to review it. And here you are jumping the mark and getting to talk all about Tales of Glory, and I can't contribute much because I haven't played it enough yet.
Oh.
But, so I'm mad at you.
I'm sorry.
Okay, you're forgiven.
But it was good.
You did forget one thing, though.
Oh, I did. Tell me, please.
The insert.
Oh, yes.
The box has an intense insert. And the tiles, like Mandy mentioned, there's kind of group 1, 2, and 3. So there's little wells that are labeled for groups 1, 2, and 3. And then all the different markers have imprinted wells so you know exactly what tokens they expect for you to put into there. And then this silly little first player marker that looks like a comical pseudo Scandinavian horned helmet thing.
Sure.
It has its own little slot that's shaped like it, and it's so unnecessary, and it's hilarious, and it totally works. And I was shocked at how good. I really like that insert. And we've had like victory points episodes about inserts and Tales of Glory. I opened the box, I'm looking at this insert, I'm like, no way. And it was solid, but
I can't believe it's because I haven't played it for a while. So I play a lot of games, so I'll have a backlog of ones I'm ready to play. And it's funny, you're absolutely right that we all kind of went, ooh, this is nice. So I can't believe I forgot. So thank you for bringing that up. Yes, we all know inserts are important. And the fact that it was labeled, beautiful. Love it.
Exactly. But no, I'm on board. Tales of Glory was a complete surprise. Again, similar to you, I had no idea what it was about when we got it. And threw it on the table. Same with my playgroup. We opened it up. We got into it. We're like, wait a minute. This is really fun. Right. And it really comes down to it's thoughtful, it's light.
Right.
And along with that, you felt compelled, just like you were saying, you wanted to match up keys.
Yes.
But you don't have to.
Exactly.
And so it wasn't punishing. And sometimes you want that really intense, brain burny, make one mistake, you're halfway out, make two mistakes, you're done kind of thing.
Right.
That's not this game. But it's by no means something that just tosses away and has no interesting decisions to be made in there.
Right.
So yeah, Tales of Glory was, if I had to name a surprise of the year to me so far, I think it's this game.
I would agree.
Because I just knew nothing about it. And it's been such a little delight. So yeah, I'm glad you liked it too.
Yeah.
All right, I will wrap up with a two-player game that's not nearly as colorful as Tales of Glory.
But I'm looking forward to hearing about it because I haven't played this, so I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
Well, I think that's because you got a review copy of this, and then Suze, I know you didn't get one here. I'll let you have it, and so that was very kind of you.
Come on, we got to
Thank
share
you.
the wealth. Share the wealth.
You're such a sweetheart. Watergate from Capstone Games. Now, this is designed by Matthias Kramer, which instantly gets my attention because Matthias Kramer has designed Glenmore, Rococo, Craftwagon, Pie Mile Flaumen, just a ton of really great games.
Yeah.
Well, here he is with Watergate. Art and graphic design by Clemens Franz and Alfred Victor Schulz. And it retails for $35 US. 2-player only, as the name indicates, set in the Watergate scandal of the Nixon administration. In this game, one player will play Nixon. The other player will basically play the journalists or the investigators into the Nixon administration. And if you have played Twilight Struggle or Fort Sumter, there is a shared essence in the card play with those games because this is largely a card-driven board game. So the board looks like a pin board, like a bulletin board. And you have a picture of Nixon in the middle, and then you have some pictures around it, and then you have all these lines that look like strings with pins, like you would put on a pin board, like a map board that you're linking things. And basically, through the gameplay, Nixon wants to survive his administration without getting caught. And the investigators want to catch him. And the way they do it is that around that pinboard edge, there are pictures of informants. And if you can place tokens that link two informants back to Nixon, then the informants win.
Ah, okay.
So there's a weird spatial element to it. That was intriguing and interesting. But it's really all in the cards. Now, the other element is board is there's this little track. And it's a tug-of-war track. So it starts in 0 in the middle, and then there's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 towards you, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 towards me. And there's a red token, a white token, and these cardboard tokens that go in there. The white token is initiative. Whoever has, and you're going to be pushing and pulling on these tokens through card play, whoever has the token on their side at the end of the round gets it. So white is initiative, who goes first, and who gets an extra card. Red tokens let you, if you get the red token, you put it on your personal player card. For the journalist, you can unlock like one-time special abilities if you get enough of them. Nixon can win the game with them, though. Because if Nixon manages to tug of war 5, I think, of them, then he's survived his administration and wins. And then there are those little tokens that I mentioned. If you have to link an informant to Nixon, there are tokens that help you do that you place on the board to do that. So that's what you're pushing and pulling. Now back to those cards that are moving those things. The cards have a number on them. Then they have text on them. Now the number can be used to play that game of tug of war, where you're moving a token or you're moving one of those pin board cardboard tokens back and forth and playing tug of war. Or you can play the card for the event text or the action text on the card. So you have these multi-use cards, which instantly gets my attention. I love multi-use cards in games. It's one of my favorite things ever. And that's got it. And that is very similar to Twilight Struggle and to Fort Sumter and games like that. So you've got this deck, unique decks, customized to Nixon, customized to the investigators. So you got a handful of cards. Okay, well, do I want to play this because, Nixon is drawing that momentum token towards him? I got to pull it back. Oh, but the event text is so strong. It would help me connect these two investigators. Well, what do I do? There are so many tough choices that come up in that card play that I just love. And then to add insult to injury or stress upon stress or whatever, some of the cards have to be discarded out of the game once you use them for their event text. The events happen once and then they're gone. So the timing of that, because of course the really powerful events have really powerful tug of war power too.
Right.
So, oh my gosh, do I get rid of this and then I never get it again? And that has, choices, decisions. That is the game. You play until somebody wins, connecting investigators, or Nixon rides out his administration. You play cards, you're playing that tug of war, or you're doing the events. That's highly historical. So the rule book looks like it's whatever, say 16 pages. I think like half of that is just history.
Right.
It really informs you about the Watergate scandal and what happened in the real history driving the game. And then the cards themselves are real people. They're all thematically tied to real investigators, real collaborators, co-conspirators, journalists, and real events like the smoking gun that happened in the thing. So from a historical point of view, I think there's a lot of value in Watergate from that angle even. And, Mandy, I really love two-player games like the Cosmos two-player line or the Lookout Spiel two-player line. And Watergate fits right in there with the complexity, with the engagement, with the enjoyment. It's really interesting. It's definitely one that you need to play multiple times as you learn the decks, as you learn the powers, as you learn the timing of when to trigger events and things like that. It's a game that rewards multiple plays because I think at first it can feel unbalanced, but the more you play, it's really just more about knowing the game.
Right.
Watergate, for me, is a winner at 2 players. I've really enjoyed it. Mandy, I'm happy to give it to you back so you can play it. I'm so sorry I took your copy.
Oh, my goodness. No, it's totally fine. I might definitely, trust me, I have a lot of games right now. So I'm glad to hear it was good, though. So it's definitely one I can, definitely borrow or try or check out here from someone. It actually sounds fun. And I'm not really into political type games, especially American politics. I mean,
sure. Why would you? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in Canada. So, I don't really... And I probably should. I don't pay attention as much as I should. But this sounds actually that it could be interesting.
So Watergate from Capstone.
Very cool. All right, well, I feel we had a lot of interesting games. And I know that I did get some emails about games that we had listed at the top of the episode last time, saying games, or, hey, are you interested in hearing about these games? And unfortunately, I got them a little bit too late for me because I had played through these already. But next episode that we have, I will give a review of Skull Hollow. This was one that I was asked about. And Imperial Settlers Northern Empire. So those two will be on next episode, and they were requested by email. So stay tuned for that.
And now let's look at the digital side of board gaming with Tap That App.
All right, I have an app this time. I have not been prepared for this segment as I should be normally. I've just been busy. That pesky work gets in the way. But I have an app today, and I will be talking about Raiders of the North Sea. That was my best, Raiders grunt, if you will.
It was so intimidating. I was truly, Mandy, that was so frightening.
Excellent. It worked. So, Raiders of the North Sea, the actual game was designed by Shem Phillips. Artist is Mihailo Dimitrievsky, and the publisher is Garfield Games, but I believe Renegade Games also distribute. The app itself was done through Direwolf, and it's available on iOS, Android, and Steam. I'm not sure. You also mentioned somewhere else that it's available, Suzanne, when we were chatting.
I believe it's on the Switch as well, which I love this push as the Nintendo Switch is getting more and more board games.
Which is exciting, because I actually have pre-ordered my Nintendo Switch Lite.
Oh, I'm very excited for you. I'm very
so
excited.
excited.
For you.
But we'll talk about that for the other episode. So the prices range, just to give everyone an idea. iOS, you're looking at about $10. Same for Android. Steam, it's about $15. I'm not sure for Nintendo Switch. In Raiders of the North Sea, you're basically, and this is from the game, it says you're impressing the chieftain by having the most victory points. Sounds pretty cool. So in the game, you're trying to plunder by raiding, settlements and providing offerings. There are actions that you can take. So they have working and raiding. When you're working, this is where in the app, you have an area that you can kind of, I'm going to get some resources, or you're going to get some more cards so you can hire workers. So these are the people you need to go and plunder the harbors and things like that to get gold, stone, and other things. There are also some really evil little tokens that when you plunder, which can axe some of the people you've brought with you on these raids. But again, these are chances we have to take. Raiding, as we talked about, is where you go out to sea with, the people that you've hired, and you try and get those gold, iron, and other kinds of things that you can also trade in later to give you more strength for when you're trying to plunder or raid other areas of the board. So the game ends, there's a few ways. It's when one set of the plunder areas are left. So in the fortresses, because the fortresses are kind of higher level areas to get to, requiring a bit more in the game for you to get. So you need more workers, you need more strength ability to get there. The offering draw pile has been emptied, or there are no Valkyrie left on the board. So the ways the game can end. In the application, I decided to play the full 2 tutorials. I hadn't played this game for a long time, so I'm like, let's just do the 2 tutorials to start. And I liked this because it did it in 2 parts. So they had the first part that kind of took you through the basic stuff, so you learn how to do the working things, you learn how to do the raiding, but at a basic level. Then when you did the part 2, and it asks you if you'd like to continue with the part 2, you can. And then it kind of gives you a little bit more strategy, how to play the game, and you start to learn a bit more of the difficult kind of plunder areas on the board. I liked that because it does take you through the levels and you have that choice. I purposely did it without reading the rules again to see if I could pick up on how to play the game. And it was actually pretty straightforward. Now, the game itself is not a difficult worker placement game, but I actually found, after the second tutorial, I was like, it's coming back to me. I got it. It's pretty straightforward. Yeah. Place here, get this, take back a worker to take another action. That's how it works. That was very clear. And then when I went to play the actual game, I just played against an AI. It was like, I get it now. Strategically, obviously, you have to do that on your own, but it worked out really nicely. The graphics are really nice and bright on this. I like the fact that it does move with you. So, for example, in the tutorial, if it's showing you something, it moves it up for you. It highlights, it gives you arrows. Those are very clear. Lots of wording to explain how and where to do things. I did have some difficulty with the worker pieces. So I thought maybe it was my touch sensitivity of my iPad, but my iPad is fairly new and I play lots of games.
Oh, so like literally interacting with the pieces, not the game mechanism.
Right. So exactly. So to be very clear, you need to grab workers from a space and drag them, or from your part at the bottom of the screen to go back onto a space to take an action. And on both ends of that, I had a hard time when I try and tap my finger on the worker, it wouldn't highlight it to bring it back or put it on a space. So I had to really find like a specific area. Okay, I'm tapping. No, double tap. Oh, wait, it's picking up. No. You had to be very specific on where you placed your finger in order to kind of capture the worker in order to get it to move. And I know that I've played other games and I haven't had this issue, so I don't know if it's something with the app or maybe I'm just not pressing something right. I made sure to punch with my whole pad of my finger, and it just seemed to take a while for me to kind of grab the worker. So that was one complaint I had on the iOS. I don't know if it is like that on Android or anything else, but that's something they might want to look into. I mean, I liked I turned the music on. Usually when I play apps, I don't turn the music on at all. I leave the volume off, but I wanted to hear what it sounded like. So, it had some very heavy, kind of, I don't know what you call it, explorer-y kind of music, but it wasn't overwhelming. And it was really cool when they had the little people pop up if they did a plunder or something, and they bang their shields and you could kind of hear that. And it made it really thematic. So it wasn't too much. I liked that part of it. So it got you into the game. Overall, I enjoyed it. And I'll be honest, this is not a game that I love in the actual, physical on the table playing it. It was fine. But the app for me was, it was easy. It was quick. And I liked it. So Raiders of the North Sea is one that I think I would actually play more digitally than I would play at the table.
I think that's great. And I'm really looking forward to it. Now, I don't have it on iOS, but I did pick it up on the Switch. And so it'll be interesting to see how the interaction changes. Right. Like the tapping that you're talking about, it'll be the Joy-Con controllers on the Switch, so it'll be interesting to see how that impacts the interaction. But I haven't had a chance to play it yet because I literally just got it yesterday. It's good to hear that you're enjoying it as an app so far. I wanted to talk about a game that's actually, we talk about these every once in a while in this segment, it doesn't have a physical comparison. It's a game that exists only in the digital space, but it so clearly pulls from traditional board and card game mechanisms that I consider it a board game app. And this is Slay the Spire. This is a deck building game by the developer Megacrit, and it's available right now on Switch and on Steam. And I have it on both platforms. I played it on Steam, and then they released it for Switch, and I thought, I like this game so much, I have to buy it on this other platform.
I'm writing it down as you're talking about it. The name alone has drawn me in.
Slay the Spire. It goes for $25, but what I will say is I have seen it go on sale multiple times for significantly less money. So if the price point is a little bit too much for you, you can keep your eye on sales on both platforms and you'll see it go down a little bit. That said, flat out, I think it's worth the $25. This game is amazing. Slay the Spire, as mentioned, is a deck builder. And what you're going to do is you're going to go progressively through, thematically, you're climbing a spire, I guess. And it's got 3 levels, so to speak. So you're going to go through these programmatically generated levels. So every time you play the game, the levels are different in terms of what you encounter. And it's you kind of get this map, this network of paths. And you can choose which path you go, and then it'll intersect. And you can choose to go right or left sometimes and things like that. But ultimately, you're always climbing towards a big boss. You go through 3 bosses, and then you hit the top, and you've completed that game, and you kind of chip away at this mammoth boss. But your game that round is over, if you manage to get there, which isn't as easy as it sounds. In the game right now, there are 3 different characters that you can play, and each one plays differently. And the game feels a little different with each one. There's the Ironclad, that is really just a brute and has some healing ability. There's the Silent that has poison ability, which I love. And then there's a character called the Defect, which is so dark. It's kind of a robot. It's called the Defect. And it has these power orbs that you can use that are amazing. You're going to pick a character, and then you get some starter cards based on that character. And as you go through these paths, you're going to encounter different locations. Some might be, and you know what they are. You get to choose. So it might be a monster. It might be a treasure chest. You can rest. Or then there's the elite monsters that are extra hard to fight, but they're extra good. You're going to collect potions. And then at the end of battles, you're going to get to choose a card to add to your deck, thereby strengthening it. And as you play, cards will deal damage. They'll throw poison. You can throw up some defense points. There's such a variety in the card play. But it plays where you're playing a card, dealing damage, and you have so much energy to spend each turn, and then your enemy goes and takes a turn and whittles down your life force. There's relics that you can earn, and these are super powerful items that once you earn it, you get it for the entire game, and they'll do things like increase your life or apply poison at the beginning of every turn to your enemy. There's a huge range of relics that you can build up. And getting relics is great because by the end of the game, by the time if you get to that 3rd level, you want to have a lot of innate abilities to fight whatever the big boss is. And that's the game. You're going to have encounters, buy cards, build up your deck, and then try to take on the big boss. It's fairly straightforward, and that's partly what works. But it is so incredibly engaging. It's very, very smooth to play. The diversity in the characters, there's only 3, but actually as of September 9th, they're beta testing a 4th character on Steam, so I'm excited for that. I have played through all the characters. I haven't managed to get through all characters on all bosses yet, but I've played this game so much. I cannot stop playing it. I might be a little addicted. It's that good. So if you like deck building games, and you like playing on Steam or Switch, I highly, highly recommend Slay the Spire. It is a great example of how digital games can take mechanisms born in the analog world and take them to the next level because of things like math and ability tracking and things like that are handled by the app. And Slay the Spire, masterfully done digital deck builder. Check it out. I do hear it's coming to mobile eventually, but don't wait. If you've got Steam or if you've got a Switch, pick it up.
You're talking about it, and I was like, let's go take a gander. Oh, it looks good. I want it.
Yeah, it's so good, Mandy. You'd like it. It's different than deck builders like Star Realms or Shards of Infinity, which are also deck builders I love and have excellent app. But this one feels different. You really feel that progression. You really feel the diversity, the vast amount of diversity in the cards and the characters. But it's so simple and straightforward. And that's really the selling point to me, is it's really easy to jump in and out of games.
So I'm looking at it now. In Canada, it's $29 on Steam. Now I'm wondering if I should wait until I get my Switch or just get it on Steam. Have you played?
It depends on where you're going to play. I love playing on my Switch because it's portable.
And that's my concern.
Right. So if I want to be sitting on the sofa with a movie in the background.
So I might have to wait because I, of course, special ordered this Nintendo Switch Lite. Okay. I'll be honest. I don't even care, even if it's like $30 or whatever. It looks like something I would play a lot. Thanks for that. Ugh, I'm spending more money.
Ha ha.
Suzanne.
Mandi, Suzanne.
Suze, my dry erase pens are leaking. What do I do?
What is Vital Lacerda really like?
Can you confirm or deny that cheesecake is a type of pie?
And now, the Dice Tower will authoritatively, definitely, possibly,
How do
maybe,
you carry
answer your questions.
Which way to the bathroom?
Well, we've got a few emails in the proverbial mailbag, so I thought that we're due, right, Mandy?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's time.
Let's see what Stuart J. had to write in. Longtime listener, love your show. Thanks, Stuart. We love you.
Thank you.
I'm not sure if this is better for general Q&A or victory points, but want some feedback on sleeves. Ooh. Do you sleeve every game? Do you have a stash of various sleeve sizes and re-sleeve as you play each different game? I'd be interested to know what percentage of gamers sleeve their games and to what extent.
Huh.
Mandy, do you sleeve?
Okay. So when I first started in the hobby, I sleeved everything. And then I got annoyed that things weren't fitting in the boxes. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. And it was like an added cost. So I stopped sleeving. And now I only sleeve games where it's a game I really like, but maybe the card quality isn't great. Or it's a game that I play a lot. Like Food Chain Magnate, which has like a bajillion cards in it. I sleeved it because it's one of my favorite games. And it was really expensive. Paperback's another one. So for me, it just depends on how often, card quality. Those are kind of the big things for me on sleeving a game. And if it's going to fit in the box. If I have to now buy a whole new box for it, now we're getting ridiculous. I sleeve in certain circumstances.
And that's the same for me. Now, Tom is pretty anti-sleeving. We all know that, right? Tom is pretty famous for his anti-sleeving stance. I fall much more into your category, Mandy. Keep in mind, I got into gaming with Magic the Gathering. Magic the Gathering's all about the sleeves. So sleeves come to me a little more naturally, perhaps.
Right.
Same with you. For example, I have a number of really hard to find games. I have the Glory to Rome Black Box Edition that chances are we will never ever see again. You better believe that game is sleeved because it's gorgeous and I'd hate to have it ruined.
You totally just came up with a nice tagline. You better believe that I sleeve. What? That's so good. That's so good.
That was accidental.
That was amazing.
Entirely.
Sorry, I had to share that with the world. Okay, keep going.
I think that it would be an interesting victory points segment on sleeving for sure. Without a doubt, there are different card sizes. I do get frustrated when sleeves don't fit kind of perfectly.
Right.
And it's certainly more economical to have a stash of sleeves and unsleeve and resleeve. But boy, oh boy, is that a lot of work to set up and break down games. So I don't know if I'd ever want to do that.
Right.
I do also sleeve, so certainly rare, hard to find, or games that get handled a lot. But the other thing I will sleeve are games that I love that I have to pick up cards off of a table a lot. Now, if you have a big playmat, it's not as big of a deal because playmats help with this. But I found for example, with Seven Wonders Duel, where you lay the cards out and then you draft them from the board, I found that that the sleeves give me just enough grip and grab and edge to make them easier to pick up. So that's actually another thing that I found that will propel me to sleeve a game, is if I have to pick it up cards off the table a lot in that manner without disturbing a tableau, I find that sleeves help with that. But in general, it's only games I love, only games I'm going to play a ton, or very rare, hard to find games that I want to protect that I will sleeve. Beyond that, I've backed off of sleeving for the most part.
Yeah, and I think we fall into that camp. And also, I'm going to throw it out there. When I was younger, I used to do, I used to collect a lot of cards for, so hockey cards. Those are things I used to sleeve either in books or sleeve and keep them in, the little containers. So I think sleeving was something I had always done. I think as you collect a lot of games, you kind of just have to determine which ones are worth sleeving. All right, let's jump into another question and let's see what Kevin has to say. So a while back on the podcast, you mentioned doing a series where you would play head-to-head online/app games. That sounded like a lot of fun. Any update on that, Suzanne?
Yeah, Kevin, I'm so glad that you remembered. It is a show that we actively have been working on and building in the background. A couple of life things got in the way. It's more technically demanding setup because we have to stream from devices and set up a multiple window stream system, including our webcams and all that other stuff. We've worked through most of those details, but it definitely has been more setup than we had hoped or planned for. But it is still in the works. It is still going to happen. We're still excited for it. More and more digital games are coming out, and they deserve to be highlighted. And Mandi and I are looking forward, at least I am, Mandi. I don't want to speak for you. I'm looking forward to playing against you online.
It'll
so
be good. And
that is coming.
I'll have help, you know what I mean? So I can like look to the comments and be like, okay, what can I do as my next move? So it's going to be great.
Jared M. asks, on a recent episode, Mandi shared her experiences playing a game with two different groups, where one group enjoyed the game and the other did not. This got me thinking, when you play a game for the very first time and it falls flat with the group, how do you know if it's because the game is bad or if the game is just a bad fit for the group?
Okay, for me, I know. Like I will sit there and I think sometimes because I'm reviewing it afterward, I kind of look at the mechanics and say, okay, I see why this didn't work with this group. Certain things I can pinpoint, even sometimes before we play, I'm like, I don't know how this is going to go over. So I try to have diverse groups where, I have some people who tend to like, heavier games, or some people like more worker placement, some people like lighter games. So I try to have that diversity in the group to get a better idea. So when a game does fall flat, it's like, okay, it didn't appeal to anybody in this group. That's a problem. I also have people in my group who'll play anything. And, they're willing to give anything a chance. And if it falls flat with those types of people, then I kind of go, okay, this might be something in the mechanics that's just not working. But for me, in advance, I kind of already know what games are going to work and what don't. And sometimes it's a surprise when it does. I'm like, oh, really? So that goes to show me, oh, okay, so they did something that can appeal to everybody. If I generally don't like it, then I will have a strong suspicion. Okay, not going to work. Because I'll play anything, really. As much as I complain about space games, as much as I complain about deck builders and all of these things, you can all say that I have had games that fall into both of those categories that I really like.
Yeah, absolutely.
I will play anything. Party games, well, that's a whole other category, but
Stop.
No, I'll try them. For me, just that goes to say, I kind of have a general idea of what people in my group like. So bringing a game to the table, I do have an idea. It may or may, I have an idea if it will go over well or not. I think Cosmic Encounter was probably the worst. That did not go over well with any of my groups, at all.
Honestly, there are so few games that I would actually categorize as bad.
Right.
And much more common to say it's not a fit for a group or not a fit for me. Cosmic Encounter is a great example. It's Tom's favorite game.
I know.
And I have no need to play that game ever again. I've played it 3 times, I think, in my life, and I've moderately enjoyed every one. And these are with people I've enjoyed, I enjoy as a group in general and things like that. So, yeah, Cosmic Encounter is one of those things with the right group who are into that kind of thing. It's magic. If you're not, watch out.
But that's a whole other discussion, though. If you can have a game that works well across all audiences, do you know what I mean? Even if it's not a mechanic that someone normally plays, they're like, oh, no, but I really liked how that worked.
You just can't. It just doesn't work that way. I doubt it. And I mean, I think for me, it's similar to what Mandi said. I think a good example just came up was in last episode that we recorded was Clip Cut Parks.
Right.
I love that game.
Right.
I've played it solo. I have fun playing multiplayer. I highlighted the things I didn't care for in it, but in general, I love that game. I was mentioning it to my playgroup afterwards that it pulled up an immediate visceral reaction then again. Oh, I hate that game so much. They hated it. Does it make it a bad game? No. Does it make it a bad game for them? Yes. But I loved it. So part of it is making sure that I contextualize the environment I'm playing in.
Right.
Am I playing with, so my core game group, I love them. And we have fun together. And even if we don't enjoy the game, I know it's not because of the people I'm playing with.
Sure, exactly.
If there's a game that they don't enjoy, I know them well enough. Like, for example, a couple of them really don't like dexterity games. I'm much softer. I like dexterity games. So I know if I'm presenting this, I kind of know how to set my expectations accordingly. And then I play games, gamers gonna talk, right? And we dialogue and we discuss the game and we break it down. What did you like? What did you not like? And I think you can really get to the heart of, oh, well, I played this character and there's just no way to stop it.
Right.
Well, that's a different problem than I don't like dexterity games and you made me play a dexterity game.
Right. We do that too in our groups. We talk about it after. What did you like? What you didn't like? And I think that's because I want to talk about it after, and it's nice to get different perspectives. So yeah, that's a really good point that you've made as well. All right. Now, David asks, my girlfriend and I are interested in having games at our wedding reception, and I feel like roll-in rights would be the best option due to cost. Are there any that would be good for non-gamers in this situation? Well, I think we have just the person to answer that, Suzanne.
Well, first of all, David, congratulations.
Yes.
I hope that your wedding is as magical as you want it to be. I love that you're bringing games into it. And it can be tough, especially in that environment where, keep in mind, you can't be there to teach games to every table or anything like that. So you're really talking about games you can throw down and maybe make as easy as possible. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking of games that can play a larger play group. It's no good to throw down a complex game that really only plays 2 to 4.
Right.
So, Mandi, the top 2 games that pop to mind for me are a game called Quingo.
Ugh, love.
And a game called Crisscross.
That was the one that was right in my head.
Oh, see, we're so on.
It's so good.
Now, Quingo, you could get at Target. It's inexpensive, and it does have a special die, but you could even, first of all, the game itself is inexpensive, but then you could even just use a 6-sider and drop a separate rule sheet. And there's player interaction. You get the table talking. The rules are very, very simple, but I like that there's interaction and it can play a larger play group. And with Crisscross, Mandi, you've used this in classrooms, things like that. It's such a straightforward game, and everybody is engaged in every turn. That's the other thing I like about these two, where nobody's just sitting out. You're not drafting dice. You're not waiting. Something gets rolled, and you're all thinking, you're all interacting. And so I think Crisscross is a great one there. What I would recommend is break the rules down into very simple one-sheet rule pages that you can laminate and put on every table with the games, so that people don't have to read an actual rule book. I would make it as easy as possible on people just to pick up and go, oh, what's this? And get an idea of the game. And, it's a wedding. Don't be disappointed if people don't play the games, too. You can lead the horse to water, but you can't make it to drink, right? It's your wedding, and people may, as much as you love games, they may be more interested in listening and seeing you and talking with each other about whatever. But I love the idea of games at a wedding, and congratulations for me, for sure. Mandi, were there any other games you could think of?
No, actually, it's funny. Crisscross was definitely the top of my list, and because I do use it in the classroom, you nailed it on the head. So no, I think those are excellent choices.
Alrighty, folks. I think we will call that an episode of the Dice Tower podcast this round. Thank you so much for your questions. You can always send us more. My email is suzanne@dicetower.com.
And mine is Mandi, that's Mandi with an I, @dicetower.com.
As always, thank you so much for joining us and listening and sending us emails and chiming in on victory points on the guild. We love hearing from you, and we're so grateful that you are part of this little Dice Tower family with us. Next episode, episode 624, Tom and Eric will be listing out their top H games, or as some countries say, H. Have you heard that? H.
Yes.
H.
I could see
or
that.
Ash.
Ash. Well, I'll say Ash.
Ash. See? I'm so multicultural.
I noticed.
Until next time, I'm Suzanne Sheldon.
And I'm Mandi Hutchinson.
And you've been listening to The Dice Tower.
Thanks for listening. Promotional consideration has been provided by game publishers in the form of review copies of games. This podcast is sponsored by listeners like you. Thank you for your continued support. And speaking of support, the Jack Basil Memorial Fund is an organization dedicated to helping gamers in need.
Learn more about the Fund's mission and how you can help at jackvassal.org. The Dice Tower is produced by Tom, Suzanne, Mandi, and Eric with assistance from Roy Cannaday and Rob Searing. Our theme is composed by Timothy Pinkham and arranged by Matt Bellier, and hosting is provided by Cool Stuff Inc. Let us know what you think of the show by posting to the Dice Tower Guild at BoardGameGeek.com, following the Dice Tower on Twitter, or by emailing us at dicetower@gmail.com. And don't forget to visit the other shows in the Dice Tower Network at dicetowernetwork.com. Until next time, from all the gang at the Dice Tower, have fun gaming.
All right, it's that time again for Two Truths and a Lie. I'm gonna start with what I talked about last episode, starting with number 1. I like to write with a fountain pen. I like fine point pens. And I would use a quill and ink to write, if I could. If you chose I like fine point pens as the lie, you would be correct. Oh, do I ever dislike fine point pens that you buy in the store? They're like scratchy and like they make that noise. And yes, I'm the type of person that buys my own pens at work because I'm very particular. If
Whoa,
I could have
I didn't know you were so picky.
Oh, I'm so picky. I'm so particular. And like a quill, oh, that would be fantastic. And I know it's kind of like a fine point, but then you can control the amount of ink to the paper. Anyway, I digress. Fine point pens are the devil. Okay, Suzanne, what about you?
Wow. How do you really feel? From last episode, I said I love to go on cruises. I've been on 6 cruises, and I get seasick. And the lie is that I like going on cruises. I actually don't love cruises as a vacation medium. But I've been on 6 now. And I don't know how that worked out, but I appreciate people who love them. They're not my favorite, let's put it that way.
All right, so new ones for you. I think these are some tough ones and interesting ones all at the same time. I have been to a live Stampede Rodeo. I have been to a live WWE match. And I have been to a live hockey game. So all about the live shows and things.
Well, one of those is obvious for anybody that knows you, Mandy.
Oh, 100%. 100%. What about you, Sid?
I love riding carousels. I love going on roller coasters. And I love riding the spinning cups.
Ooh, this is my kind of 2 truths and a lie. I should have gone with that theme. Maybe next time.
Next time.
All right. Good luck, everyone.